Well, the question both literally and rhetorically is who killed Charlie Kirk? Let's try and answer that question. We've got three voices tonight here on India Matters. David Sofair is a Republican strategist. He joins us from the United States tonight. Welcome, David. Jonah is a former advisor to President Biden. He's also with the National University of Singapore and RAND Corporation. And Adelle Nazarian is a podcaster and senior fellow with the Gold Institute for International Strategy. She's a well-known journalist and foreign policy analyst as well. Adelle, welcome to all of you. David, I'd like to start with you. Like I said, it's a literal question right now tonight because the killer of Charlie Kirk hasn't been found yet. That investigation is on. There's also a culture war and a huge blame game that's going on over who is really responsible. So your opening thoughts, who killed Charlie Kirk?
Before I get started, I just want my thoughts and prayers to go out to all the victims of September 11th. This is a tragic day in American history. And I'd also like to send my condolences to the Kirk family as well. This is a tragic killing. You know, here in the States, we really condemn any sort of political violence, especially in journalism, which has been happening a lot lately. And more recently, on both sides of the aisle, there's been a lot of political violence, whether it's been a firebomb or shootings or assassination attempts, and a lot of death threats and hate mail. I mean, these numbers are way, way up. So that's how I'd like to start it. Now, your question was who killed? You know, we're not going to speculate. They found the weapon, and there is no doubt that the killer or group or whatever it is will be brought to justice in no short order.
Jonah, who in your view killed Charlie Kirk?
Well, we don't know. The killer has not been found, and we have no idea. But the one thing I think that all of us can agree on is that guns are far too easy to get in America, and that both on the left, on the right, on the center, wherever you may be on the political spectrum, there's no excuse possible for killing a political opponent. There's no excuse for killing children at a school, which also happens with alarming frequency in America. The same day that Charlie Kirk was killed, we had yet another schoolyard shooting, not even far away in Evergreen, Colorado. So I think at least before we even address the question of who killed Charlie Kirk, let's just all agree that we need to come together to make firearms under control and not so widely available for just anyone to use as political tools of vengeance.
Adelle, what is your view? Same question. We do know literally that the killer has not been found just yet, but there are fingers being pointed by both sides of the political aisle over venomous rhetoric, the normalization of violence, gun laws in the United States, some of the things that Charlie Kirk himself said. What do you think, both literally and metaphorically, who killed Charlie Kirk, Adelle?
Look, whoever killed Charlie Kirk must be found, must be brought to justice. That's not a question in my mind. I think, though, this rhetoric about trying to blame it on guns is crazy. People kill people with guns, with knives, with ramming their cars into crowds. I have news for everyone here. The guns in America aren't going anywhere. And you can talk about it from here to high water, but it's never going to change. This is what America was founded on. And unless they're planning on rounding up militias, literally sending out militias, which is a far left talking point and a belief, and rounding people up like the Nazis did, that's what you're looking at. And that's not what America's going to do, because that's not what's going to happen. I'm sorry. What happened to Charlie is a national tragedy. This is trying to silence someone for having an opinion that differs from whoever decided to carry out this horrible tragedy.
David, President Obama put out a post on social media today offering his condolences to the family of Charlie Kirk. And if you looked at the replies to President Obama, they were almost uniformly from the American right, where they said that it is the normalization of violence, it is the rhetoric, it is the demonization of the American right, that has made something like this possible. Do you agree with that? Because the same thing is being said on the other side as well, David.
Well, I again, my heart goes out to all the victims here, and the witnesses are actually victims now as well. But what really is, and when you really boil it down, and when you look at where the violence is happening from a political standpoint, it is on the left. And when you say far right, I find that a very misleading statement that you're saying on your TV right now. He was really a guy that was, in a democratic sphere that had some conservative values. He was nowhere near he was nowhere near as far left as, the people that are in Antifa or in BLM, for example, who burnt down America and killed, hundreds of people with guns and torches and bombs. And, that was, state sponsored as well, unfortunately. And then, we had in the Biden administration, they really took down the freedom of speech. And what they did was they emboldened the media as well. So, I hate to quote the Washington Post, but democracy really does die in darkness. And that's what we have been seeing here happen. So, and when it comes down to guns, let's be real clear on that. The majority of gun crimes aren't, which is a terrible thing, are happening in Democrat precincts and with unlicensed Democrats killing each other. So, that should be addressed more. So, I'm all for, responsible ownership of, firearms, but I'm definitely not for criminals and for, Biden-era state-sponsored decriminalization of crime, which I'm not conflating the two. We have no idea who's behind this or whatever. But I just wanted to, really bring that up for your viewers because democracy does matter. And, this is really a huge problem, and I was the first person to condemn, any sort of political terror or suppression of free speech or, suppression of our amendments that we have here that we fight for in this country. So the idea that people are far left and far right isn't the truth. And the idea of the MAGA movement as well. I mean, so Trump won the popular vote by a landslide, by the majority. So, that is the average American voted for Trump. So the average person on a college campus or, on a coast, obviously, is something else. But we should not demonize, President Trump, his cabinet, the people of America, etc. So let's be clear there. And Democrats have guns too.
Jonah, you're shaking your head. You don't agree with that. Go ahead.
Oh, well, the number of misstatements we've just heard is pretty extraordinary. Just to start out, Donald Trump did not win a majority of the popular vote. He won a very, very narrow minority. He did not win by a landslide. He won a legitimate victory. This was not a mandate in any way. We can go back and litigate a whole lot of the statements here, but they're not really important. What matters here is that a very powerful and influential political figure was killed. We do not know why. We do know how. We can speculate on why, and my speculations are probably not different from those of my colleagues. But what we know is that he was killed by a gun, and that Americans have far too an easy task of getting weapons of death in their hands. I could go out right now from my home, and in half an hour, I could be holding a semi-automatic rifle. You can't do that in India, and that's one of the reasons that Indian politicians and Indian political figures are not being gunned down on a regular basis.
That's very true, and I would argue that there's also a cultural layer to that answer, but we'll never know because we don't have the same gun laws. But I take your point. Adelle, beyond just the gun laws issue, there's a real culture war which cannot be ignored. The extreme demonization of one side by the other, this whole good versus evil narrative and rhetoric. over simple political disagreements, makes this seem like every political argument or debate is something that must end with complete victory and one side vanquishing the other. And that's where all this bloodthirst actually comes from, possibly, Adele.
Well, it is. It's at an all-time high. And honestly, what's happened now is, I don't know if any of you were watching TMZ at the time, the issue with Harvey Levin. There were people in his staff laughing in the background, and then they tried to apologize and say that it was because of a car chase that was underway. But you can tell in his body language it was a complete lie. There are journalists who are laughing and praising and cheering on his death. Teachers, educators who educate our children who are praising his death. People mostly on the left who are praising his death. I have to tell you, this should not be a political issue. What effectively has now happened is that the people who hate him, whether it's an Islamist, whether it's a Marxist, whether it's a leftist, have turned Charlie Kirk, who is a friend of mine, by the way, who was a friend of mine. I worked with him before. And they've made him into a martyr. You're going to see tens of millions of people, if not more, going online, watching his videos, listening to his thoughts, and putting even more attention on what he's saying. And what is it going to do? Hey, if you don't like it or not, it's going to ignite something politically inside of them. Maybe they were ideologically left or center. I have a feeling they're going to turn maybe against the party they're part of and turn the other way and say, look, what he's been saying, like it or not, it's the truth. And it's going to resonate with a lot more people. So in his death, sadly, he may have had more of an impact for what's about to happen next. And I think there's going to be, as I'm hearing many people saying, a reckoning. I will say this, I will preface that by saying violence is never the answer. Absolutely, bloodshed should never be the answer. And I think what we're doing here is not just having a political battle for the ages. This is a battle for the heart and soul of Western civilization, which India is very much a part of, alliances, and it is far deeper than anyone can possibly imagine. And you're absolutely correct. The US-India relationship does have everything to do with, is very much involved with this. Yeah. What Charlie said, obviously, was coming from a nationalistic perspective, but America, Indians, Hindus who are in America are just as much part of the American fabric as everyone else, and he was not a bigoted person, and people may try to present him that way, but he really was not. And I think that this has to be a lesson that even if you disagree with someone, you have to honestly emulate left, right, center, Democrat, Republican, what Charlie did. And he sat down with people who were ideologically opposed to him and would use sound common sense and valid arguments to disagree and put forth why he did not agree with the other side. And I think we need more of that.
No, Adele, I completely agree with you. I just tend to be a little skeptical when I hear the word reckoning, especially when it comes to gun crimes in the United States that have a political layer to them, because we've seen them come and go, and nothing has really changed in that sense, either procedurally or in terms of the law, or even in terms of the normalization of such crime. A quick final answer from you, Adele, on that.
I think that, as I said before, thank you, I don't think America's gun problem is going anywhere. It's part of the founding of the nation. America's very exceptional in this regard, for the better or worse, till death do us part. I guess you can say guns in America are married, and they're never getting divorced. And I think that said, there has to be, look, anyone who wants to do something bad is going to get it done. You saw what happened with Irina, the Ukrainian immigrant in America who was brutally slaughtered with a pocket knife. If someone wants to do something, they're going to find a way to do that thing. And this is more of a spiritual war, I think, in battle. That's the underlying cause of what's happening. And I really hope people wake up and see that they choose good over bad. I really do.
Well, the killer has not been found. We don't know specifically why Charlie Kirk was killed. We have ideas. There's a lot of rhetoric. There's a lot of speculation and theories as to why it happened. And it has only triggered more. I think we can be safely certain that in his death, Charlie Kirk is probably going to be much more popular than he would ever have been alive. Thank you very much, David, Jonah, and Adele. Your time is valuable here on India Matters. Thank you.